The silent response. High Admiral Zekthor stood before the massive holographic display, his scaled appendages twitching with barely contained glee as he watched the recordings of humanity's devastation for the 100th time. The biological atomizer had performed beyond their wildest expectations, reducing the human colony of Sirius Prime to nothing more than gray ash and scattered memories. Replay the sequence from the western continent, he commanded, his multiple eyes fixed on the horrific beauty of his species' greatest weapon. The coal, as it was known in Galactic Common, had proven itself worthy of every resource they had poured into its development. The holographic display shifted, showing terrified humans running through streets as the neutron wave approached. Their primitive vehicles abandoned, their pathetic attempts at evacuation futile. The wave caught them, their bodies dissolving into ash that scattered in the wind. It was elegant, efficient, and absolute in its destruction. Magnificent, whispered Subcommander Yalti from her position behind him. The human United Nations will have no choice but to submit now. Their strongest colonial world, reduced to nothing in mere minutes. But Zekthor's satisfaction was beginning to wear thin. 2 standard weeks had passed since the demonstration of Kak's superiority, and the expected capitulation hadn't come. No desperate pleas for mercy, no hasty diplomatic missions, not even a formal condemnation of the attack. What do our intelligence assets say about the human response? He asked, turning to face his intelligence chief, Kaxval, who had been unusually quiet during the past few days. The intelligence chief's scales shifted to a darker shade of green, a sign of discomfort among their species. High Admiral, we're having difficulty gathering reliable intelligence from human space. Explain. The human exodus we observed, it wasn't just from the galactic community worlds. They're pulling back from everything. Mining operations, research stations, trade outposts, all abandoned. Even their military installations are being systematically evacuated. Zekthor's central eye narrowed. They're retreating to their homeworld. Cowering like the primitives they are. That appears to be the case, but... Kaxval paused, his lower appendages twitching nervously. There's something else. Something our analysts are struggling to understand. The holographic display shifted again, this time showing a map of known space. The human-controlled systems were highlighted in blue, but something was wrong with the map. The usual indicators of hyperspace lanes connecting human systems were missing. They're erasing the hyperspace lanes, Kaxval explained. Somehow, they're removing them from existence. Our ships can no longer traverse these routes, they simply aren't there anymore. A laugh erupted from Zekthor's primary breathing cavity. They're cutting themselves off. Isolating themselves from the galaxy. This is even better than we hoped. They're so terrified of our power that they're hiding behind walls of their own making. But Kaxval didn't share his superior's amusement. High Admiral, with respect, our xenopsychologists are concerned. This behavior, it doesn't match any known pattern of species response to military defeat. The humans are known for their unpredictability, but this is beyond unusual. They're animals, Kaxval. Clever animals, perhaps, but animals nonetheless. They've seen true power and are retreating to their den to lick their wounds. Zekthor turned back to the holographic display, watching once again as the neutron wave claimed its victims. Let them hide. When they emerge, they will find a galaxy united under Kak rule, and they will have no choice but to submit or face extinction. But deep in his secondary brain, a small voice of worry began to whisper. The humans were indeed unpredictable. Their species had achieved faster-than-light travel while still fighting among themselves, had colonized worlds while their own planet suffered from environmental degradation, had joined the galactic community while still maintaining their bizarre system of competing nation-states. The voice grew louder as reports continued to arrive over the following days. Human ships were being recalled from every corner of known space. Their diplomats disappeared from every forum and council. Communication channels fell silent one by one. It was as if humanity was systematically erasing itself from the galaxy. In the great halls of the CAC capital, celebrations continued. The victory over Sirius Prime was heralded as the beginning of a new age of CAC dominance. But in secure briefing rooms and intelligence centers, worry began to grow. The humans were planning something. But what? The answer began to emerge 3 standard months after the destruction of Sirius Prime, and it came not from the direction of human space, but from within the CAC Empire itself. The first indication was subtle, a slight increase in industrial accidents across key military production facilities. Then came reports of mysterious system failures in the Empire's communication networks. Supply chains began to experience unexplained delays and shortages. Caxval was the first to see the pattern, but by then it was too late. The humans hadn't retreated in fear, they had gone dark to prepare. And somehow, they had already infiltrated the very heart of the CAC Empire. The real war was about to begin. The first strike. General Sarah Chen stood in the dimly lit command center deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display showing the status of Operation Silent Blade. Thousands of green dots scattered across the map of CAC space represented human operatives who had spent years preparing for this moment. Status report on Phase 1, she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Colonel James Rodriguez, head of cyber warfare, stepped forward. The nanite infiltration is complete, General. Our people have successfully seeded them throughout 82% of critical CAC infrastructure. The remaining 18% are isolated military installations that will handle in Phase 2. The nanites were humanity's answer to the coal, microscopic machines that had been carefully introduced into CAC society through seemingly innocent trade goods over the past decade. The CAC's hubris had made them careless, never suspecting that the primitive humans could develop technology sophisticated enough to bypass their security measures. And our sleeper agents? All in position, replied Director Maya Patel of Special Operations. We've had people embedded in their society for 15 years, General. The CAC's biological supremacy doctrine made them blind to the possibility that we could alter our own DNA enough to pass their scans. They're still looking for baseline humans. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The CAC's belief in their genetic superiority had been their first mistake. Their second had been assuming that humanity's fractured political system meant they were incapable of long-term strategic planning. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Across CAC space, hidden commands activated the dormant nanites. In military shipyards, microscopic machines began corrupting structural integrity fields. In communication hubs, they interfered with quantum relay systems. In weapon factories, they introduced subtle flaws into production processes. But the real damage was being done by the human operatives themselves. Years of careful infiltration had placed them in positions throughout CAC society, maintenance workers, mid-level bureaucrats, service staff. Each had memorized their role in humanity's response to any major attack. The CAC had expected retaliation. They had prepared for nuclear strikes, for biological weapons, for conventional military assaults. What they hadn't prepared for was subtle sabotage on an empire-wide scale. In the CAC military headquarters on Provos 3, Subcommander Yalti was beginning to realize something was terribly wrong. High Admiral, she reported, her scales shifting to warning colors, were detecting systematic failures across multiple sectors. Zekthor, still basking in the glory of their victory at Sirius Prime, dismissed her concerns. Normal equipment degradation. Have the maintenance crews handle it. Sir, with respect, these aren't normal failures. We've lost contact with the coal research facility in the Dendrix system. The backup facilities on Miros and Kalos are reporting critical system errors. Our entire superweapon program is going dark. That got his attention. Impossible. Those facilities are completely isolated from external networks. Show me the data. The holographic display revealed a pattern that should have been obvious earlier. Critical systems were failing across the Empire, but not in a random pattern. The failures were systematic, targeted, and precisely coordinated. Status of the defense fleet. Zekthor commanded. 30% of our capital ships are reporting engine troubles, Yalti replied, her voice shaking. Another 40% are experiencing weapons system malfunctions. We're being crippled, sir. In the Himalayan Command Center, Sarah Chen watched as the first phase of humanity's response unfolded. Status of the CAC military response. Exactly as predicted, General Rodriguez reported. They're trying to route emergency response teams to critical facilities, spreading their resources thin. Their command structure is in chaos, trying to determine if this is a coordinated attack or a series of coincidences. Excellent. Begin Phase 3. Across CAC space, human operatives moved to their secondary objectives. In the confusion of failing systems and emergency responses, security protocols were bypassed, access codes were compromised, and critical data began flowing back to Earth. But the true masterpiece of humanity's response was yet to be revealed. While the CAC struggled to understand what was happening to their empire, massive construction projects hidden in the void between stars were nearing completion. The humans hadn't just been retreating when they erased the hyperspace lanes. They had been preparing to create new ones, lanes that only they could access, a secret network that would allow them to strike anywhere in CAC space without warning. In her private quarters that evening, Sarah Chen reviewed the casualty reports from Sirius Prime for the 1000th time. Millions of innocent lives had been lost to the CAC's demonstration of power. But humanity's response wouldn't be a single act of vengeance, it would be the systematic dismantling of an empire that had grievously underestimated their capabilities. Send the signal to begin final phase, she commanded. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters activated, sending coded messages to the human operatives in deep cover. The time had come to reveal just how deeply humanity had infiltrated the CAC Empire. In the CAC Imperial Palace itself, High Counselor Vextra, third in line to the Imperial throne, received the message through a quantum-encrypted channel in his private chambers. He touched the genetic marker hidden beneath his scales, the one that proved he was actually Colonel David Chen, Sarah's brother, who had undergone extensive genetic modification 15 years ago to replace the real Vextra. The palace guards never understood why the High Counselor chose that moment to access the Imperial Defense Network. They never suspected that the security codes he input would transmit the entire CAC military database back to Earth. And they certainly never imagined that the prestigious High Counselor was about to trigger a cascade of events that would shake the Empire to its foundations. The first strike wasn't an explosion or an invasion. It was the quiet click of a quantum computer activating, and with it, the beginning of the CAC Empire's descent into chaos. The Hidden Army. Dr. Amara Patel stood in the observation deck of humanity's first fleet, watching as thousands of ships emerged from their hiding places in the dark matter clouds surrounding the Orion Arm. For 15 years, these vessels had been constructed in absolute secrecy, their existence hidden from even most of Earth's population. Final ship count coming in, reported Admiral Marcus Zhang through the quantum-encrypted comm channel. 3,000 heavy capital ships, 8,000 destroyers, and 15,000 frigates. All crews report ready. The fleet represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, ships built not just for war, but for a specific type of warfare that would exploit every weakness in CAC military doctrine. Each vessel incorporated technology that the CAC had dismissed as theoretically impossible, developed by scientists who had spent their entire careers working in secret. Status of the Phantom Drive systems? Amara asked, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had sacrificed everything for this moment. All green. The CAC still haven't detected the quantum signature of our new hyperspace lanes. As far as they're concerned, we're still hiding on Earth. The Phantom Drive was Amara's life work, a propulsion system that could create and navigate artificial hyperspace lanes undetectable by conventional sensors. While the CAC had been celebrating their victory over Sirius Prime, humanity had been weaving an invisible web of these lanes throughout their empire. In the Kak Imperial Palace, the chaos triggered by High Counselor Vextra's actions was reaching a crescendo. Security forces had finally realized something was wrong when they lost contact with multiple defensive installations simultaneously, but by then, it was too late. High Admiral Yalti burst into Zekthor's private chambers, her scales almost white with panic. "We've confirmed it, we're under attack." "But, it's impossible." "Speak clearly, Sub-Commander," Zekthor snapped, although his own scales were beginning to pale. "The humans, they're everywhere. We've just discovered that thousands of our own citizens aren't really Kak. Somehow, they've modified themselves to pass as our species. And the hyperspace lanes we thought they erased? They've created new ones we can't even detect." Before Zekthor could respond, the palace's emergency sirens began to wail. On every screen, in every holographic display, the same message appeared, written in perfect Kak script. "You took one world from us. Now watch as we take your empire apart, piece by piece." Back in the fleet, Amara activated her neural link to the command network. The human operatives embedded throughout Kak space had done their work well. Phase 3 had crippled the Empire's infrastructure. Now it was time for Phase 4. "All ships, execute Operation Starfall," she commanded. Across Kak space, the invisible hyperspace lanes lit up with activity. Human warships emerged simultaneously at thousands of locations, targeting key military installations, shipyards, and command centers. But these weren't conventional attacks, each strike was precisely calculated to exploit the weaknesses created by years of sabotage. In the Dendrix system, home to the Kak's primary military research facilities, Admiral Zhang's task force appeared literally inside the defensive perimeter. The Phantom Drive allowed them to bypass the elaborate shield networks completely, emerging from hyperspace at points the Kak had thought physically impossible. "Begin broadcast," Zhang ordered. Every communication device in the system activated simultaneously, broadcasting a message that would soon be repeated across the Empire. "Attention Kak citizens. Your leadership has lied to you. The attack on Sirius Prime wasn't a demonstration of strength, it was an act of desperation by those who feared humanity's potential. Today, we demonstrate why they were right to be afraid." The human fleet opened fire, but not with conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed the other secret humanity had been developing, the quantum cascade device. Unlike the Kak's biological atomizer, this weapon didn't target organic matter. Instead, it disrupted the very quantum fields that the Kak relied on for their advanced technology. In seconds, the pride of Kak military research was reduced to inert metal and crystal, their quantum cores rendered useless by a technology they hadn't believed possible. Meanwhile, on Earth, Sarah Chen received the first reports of the fleet's engagement. "Status of Operation Ghost Protocol." "Proceeding as planned," Maya Patel replied. "Our embedded agents have begun activating their secondary protocols. The Kak government is about to discover that roughly 30% of their military officers are actually human operatives." The scale of the infiltration was staggering. While the Kak had focused on genetic purity and biological supremacy, humanity had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Empire's obsession with genetic verification had made them blind to the possibility that genetics itself could be falsified. In the depths of space, another secret was about to be revealed. The dark matter clouds that had hidden the human fleet contained something else, massive construction platforms where a new type of weapon was nearing completion. "Project Prometheus status?" Amara asked, turning to her primary research assistant, Dr. James Chen. "Final calibrations complete," he reported. "The quantum entanglement network is stable. We can begin the sequence whenever you give the word." Project Prometheus represented humanity's ultimate response to the Kak's biological atomizer. While the Kak had created a weapon that could destroy all life on a planet, humanity had created something far more terrifying, a device that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics within a localized space. The CAC believed they were the masters of quantum mechanics, but humanity had been quietly pushing the boundaries of physics in ways the CAC had never imagined. Project Prometheus wasn't just a weapon, it was proof that humanity's understanding of the universe had surpassed their would-be conquerors. As the first day of open conflict drew to a close, the true extent of humanity's preparation began to dawn on the CAC leadership. They hadn't just been fighting a war, they had already lost it, years before they fired their first shot. In his private chambers, High Admiral Zekthor received one final message from his most trusted advisor, who, he now realized, had never been CAC at all. You thought our silence was weakness. Our retreat was fear. Our isolation was submission. You forgot the most important lesson of history: sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one that lets you think you've won. The Empire's realization. Emperor Kvax XI, supreme ruler of the CAC Empire, conqueror of 1,000 stars, and keeper of the sacred quantum flame, was afraid. For the first time in the Empire's 10,000-year history, the imperial sanctuary beneath the capital city was being used for its intended purpose, as a final refuge in case of catastrophic defeat. How, he demanded, his scales shifting through patterns of rage and terror. How did we not see this coming? The emergency council chamber was filled with the Empire's highest-ranking survivors, those who hadn't been revealed as human agents or killed in the initial strikes. High Admiral Zekthor, his scales now permanently pale with stress, stepped forward. Your Imperial Majesty, we've completed our preliminary analysis. The humans, they've been planning this since before they even achieved space flight. Impossible. Kvax spat. They were killing each other over resources when we first detected their radio signals. That's just it, sire, Intelligence Chief Caxval interjected. We've discovered that what we thought was primitive tribal warfare was actually a carefully orchestrated deception. Their apparent political divisions, their technological development path, even their environmental crisis, it was all designed to make us underestimate them. The Imperial Archives projected a historical timeline, showing humanity's apparent development. But now, overlaid with newly discovered data, a very different picture emerged. They achieved quantum manipulation technology a century before they revealed it, Caxval continued. Their genetic engineering capabilities surpassed ours 50 years ago. The political conflicts we observed were elaborate training exercises, preparing their population for long-term deep-cover operations. In orbit above the CAC homeworld, automated defense platforms suddenly detected multiple quantum anomalies. The phantom drive signatures that their hastily modified sensors could now detect were appearing everywhere, but this time, the human ships weren't attacking. They were simply watching. Admiral Zhang's voice boomed across all frequencies, to the leadership of the CAC Empire. You have one standard hour to consider your position. We suggest you use this time to understand exactly what you're facing. In the sanctuary, the Emperor's advisors scrambled to present their analysis of the human threat, each revelation more terrifying than the last. The quantum cascade device doesn't just disable our technology, the chief scientist explained, his appendages trembling. It fundamentally alters the quantum fields we rely on. They can selectively disable any technology they choose, down to the atomic level. Their phantom drive network, another analyst added, it's not just a few hidden lanes. They've created an entire parallel hyperspace infrastructure. They can appear anywhere, at any time, and we can't track them. But it was the next revelation that truly shook the Emperor's confidence. Project Prometheus, Zekthor said quietly. We've confirmed what it is. It's not just a weapon, it's a reality manipulation system. They can literally rewrite the laws of physics within a defined space. Kvax's primary heart nearly stopped. That's beyond theoretical possibility. No, Your Majesty. It's beyond our theoretical understanding. The humans, they've been advancing their physics knowledge in secret, following research paths we dismissed as impossible. They didn't just catch up to us, they went in directions we never imagined. In high orbit, Dr. Amara Patel watched the CAC leadership through quantum-entangled sensors that could penetrate any shielding. She turned to General Chen, who had joined the fleet for this phase of the operation. "They're beginning to understand," she said. "Should we show them the final piece?" Sarah Chen nodded grimly. "They need to know exactly what their attack on Sirius Prime has awakened." Across CAC space, every quantum communication device, every holographic projector, every data terminal activated simultaneously. The entire Empire watched as a new message began. "People of the CAC Empire. You believed your biological atomizer was the ultimate weapon. You celebrated as it destroyed millions of innocent lives on Sirius Prime. Now, witness the true power of humanity's response." The fleet activated Project Prometheus. In a carefully chosen uninhabited star system, reality itself began to change. The laws of physics twisted, quantum fields realigned, and matter itself responded to new fundamental forces. In the space of a few minutes, an entire star system was transformed into something that defied CAC understanding of scientific possibility. This demonstration, the broadcast continued, represents less than 1% of Project Prometheus's full capability. Unlike your biological atomizer, our weapon doesn't just destroy, it rewrites reality itself. We can turn your quantum technology against you, transform your worlds into states of matter you cannot comprehend, or simply erase portions of spacetime from existence. In the Imperial Sanctuary, Emperor Kvax watched with growing horror as the implications became clear. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them militarily, they had transcended the very boundaries of what the CAC had believed possible. "We thought we were punishing an inferior species," Zekthor whispered. "Instead, we provoked a civilization that had been hiding its true capabilities, waiting to see if we would prove worthy of peaceful coexistence. And we failed that test," Kvax realized. "When we destroyed Sirius Prime, we proved ourselves to be exactly what they feared, a species that would abuse power without understanding its consequences." The hour of contemplation was nearly over, but the CAC leadership had already reached their conclusion. They had started this conflict believing they were demonstrating their superiority. Instead, they had revealed their greatest weakness, their inability to recognize that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to use that power. As the Emperor prepared to respond to the human ultimatum, a final message appeared before him, this one private, from an entity identifying itself as the Human Strategic Command. "Your empire survived 10,000 years because you were the most advanced civilization you knew. Now you must decide, will you survive another day by accepting that you no longer hold that position?" Humanity's verdict. The quantum-encrypted transmission from Emperor Kvax arrived precisely as the one-hour deadline expired. In the command center of the Human First Fleet, military and civilian leaders gathered to hear the CAC Empire's response to their ultimatum. "Display the message," General Sarah Chen ordered, her face illuminated by the holographic projectors. The Emperor's image appeared, his scales now a uniform gray, the CAC expression of complete submission. "To the leaders of humanity, we offer our unconditional surrender. The CAC Empire places itself at your mercy." But mercy, as the CAC were about to discover, wasn't quite what humanity had in mind. Dr. Amara Patel stepped forward, her quantum neural interface glowing softly. "Permission to implement final protocol, General." Sarah nodded. "Proceed with Phase Omega." Across CAC space, reality began to shift. Not in the destructive way they had feared, but in a manner far more profound. The quantum fields generated by Project Prometheus didn't destroy, they transformed. "People of the CAC Empire," Amara's voice echoed through every communication device in CAC-controlled space, "you are about to experience something your species has never known, genuine empathy." The quantum fields emanating from the human fleet weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were the culmination of decades of research into consciousness itself. As the fields washed over CAC worlds, their inhabitants experienced something unprecedented, they began to feel what others felt, to understand perspectives beyond their own. In the Imperial Sanctuary, Emperor Kvax gasped as new sensations flooded his consciousness. For the first time in his species' history, he could feel the emotions of others, not just of his own kind, but of every sentient being within range of the quantum field. What is this?" he whispered, overwhelmed by the experience. High Admiral Zekthor, experiencing the same phenomenon, suddenly understood. "This is how they did it," he said, his voice trembling. "This is how humans achieved what they did. They can naturally feel what we're feeling now. Their entire species is connected by empathy." In orbit above the Kak homeworld, Sarah Chen explained to her staff what was happening. The Kak evolved as solitary apex predators. Their inability to empathize wasn't just cultural, it was biological. We couldn't defeat them militarily without becoming what we feared. So we found another way. The quantum fields weren't just creating temporary connections, they were rewriting the very nature of Kak consciousness, permanently altering their species' capability for empathy and emotional understanding. "Their bodies will remain the same," Amara added, "but their minds will never again be capable of the kind of casual cruelty that led to the destruction of Sirius Prime. They'll retain their intelligence, their knowledge, their individual personalities, but now they'll understand the consequences of their actions on an emotional level." Across the Empire, the transformation was taking hold. Kak citizens found themselves overwhelmed by newfound connections to others. Military officers wept as they finally understood the true cost of their past actions. Political leaders experienced, for the first time, the genuine impact of their decisions on their people. But humanity's plan didn't stop there. As the Kak struggled to adapt to their new emotional reality, the human fleet began its next phase of operations. "Begin the reconstruction," Sarah ordered. From the massive construction platforms hidden in dark matter clouds emerged a new type of vessel, automated terraforming ships equipped with quantum engineering technology. They headed not just to Sirius Prime, but to every world damaged by Kak aggression over the centuries. "You believed your biological atomizer was ultimate power," Sarah's voice echoed across Kak space. "But true power lies not in destruction, but in creation. Watch as we restore what you destroyed." On Sirius Prime, quantum fields began to reverse the damage caused by the biological atomizer. From the gray ash, organic matter began to reconstruct itself. The process would take years, but the dead world would live again. In the Imperial Palace, now exposed to open air as defensive shields failed, Emperor Kvax received a private communication from the human leadership. It contained not terms of surrender, but a proposal for the future. "The Kak Empire will not be destroyed," the message read. "It will be transformed. Your technology will be modified to prevent its use for mass destruction. Your society will be restructured to prevent the rise of totalitarian control. But most importantly, your people will never again be able to ignore the suffering of others." The message continued, "This is not punishment, it is evolution. Humanity spent thousands of years learning to balance technological progress with ethical development. We will guide your species through the same process, but at an accelerated rate." In the following months, the true scope of humanity's victory became clear. They hadn't just defeated the Kak Empire, they had fundamentally changed it. The quantum empathy fields became permanent fixtures in Kak space, ensuring that future generations would grow up with the ability to understand and feel for others. The human infiltrators revealed themselves, but instead of leaving, many stayed to help guide the Kak through their transformation. The deep-cover operatives who had lived as Kak for decades became bridges between the two civilizations, helping to ease the transition. 1 year after the surrender, Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt chambers of the Kak Imperial Palace, addressing a joint session of human and Kak leaders. "The lesson of Sirius Prime was not that humanity is stronger than the Kak," she declared. "It was that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to transform. We could have annihilated your civilization. Instead, we chose to help you grow." In the audience, Emperor Kvax listened, his scales now displaying the subtle color patterns that indicated deep emotional understanding, something impossible for his species just a year ago. Our victory, Sarah continued, was not won through the Phantom Drive, or the Quantum Cascade device, or even Project Prometheus. It was won the moment we decided to respond to genocide not with revenge, but with reformation. The former High Admiral Zekthor, now serving as a liaison between the species, added his own observation: we thought we were superior because we could end life. Humanity proved their superiority by showing us how to truly live it. As the assembly concluded, Dr. Amara Patel activated one final protocol in the quantum network. Across both human and CAC space, the barriers between hyperspace lanes dissolved. The separated networks merged into one, creating paths that both species could travel freely. The galaxy is entering a new age, she announced. One where power is measured not by the ability to take life, but by the capacity to enrich it. And in the restored fields of Sirius Prime, where ash had been transformed back into flourishing ecosystems, a monument was erected. It bore a simple inscription in both human and CAC script. Here lies the end of empire and the beginning of understanding. May we never forget that the greatest victory is not the defeat of an enemy, but their transformation into a friend.